Joining us on the line is Axel Kaiser. He's a Chilean-German lawyer, senior fellow at the Archbridge Institute, and visiting scholar at the Hoover Institution of Stanford University. Axel, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the election of Javier Milei in Argentina. He is super colorful. I got to say, really enjoying him a lot from both an optics standpoint and also from an agenda-driven standpoint. The media despise him. Tell us about who exactly Javier Milei is for those who don't know.
Yes, well, Javier Milei is, first of all, a libertarian economist. He's a very technical economist, so he's a guy who knows what he's talking about. He is someone who is ideas-driven. He's not going, after power. He's a person who is very eccentric. He's, an Argentinian type of charismatic leader. And in Argentina, things like being a sex guru, things like being a former soccer player and things like that are like part of the political culture. And that has been, I think, important for his success. But mostly, he has been right for the last 7-8 years, predicting everything that has happened in Argentina in economic terms. And so I think this is the most important election in the history of Latin America. And I'm not exaggerating. And I think it's also extremely relevant for the entire Western world, because if people understood what Argentina is all about, this collectivism, this wokeism, and this anti-capitalist mindset, the fact that Milei won there is like, some crazy Christian winning in Saudi Arabia if they had elections. It's like almost impossible. So it's really an achievement. It's extraordinary. And if he's successful, this will set the stage for our president for the whole of the developing world and also for the developed world.
So, Axel, for those who don't follow Argentinian politics, who kind of, only know about it because they watched a musical with Madonna in it, what exactly is the story of Argentina's economic development or actually catastrophic dissolution over the course of the last 40 years?
Well, we need to understand that Argentina is the most Western nation in Latin America. Okay, the population is mostly European. That's why people were crazy when they won the World Cup because there were no black players in the Argentinian soccer team, and they were being attacked for that. But the reality is that Argentina was the nation with the highest per capita income in the world in 1895 in the world, and previous to the First World War, the 6% average GDP growth that they achieved for almost 50 years is the fastest economic growth rate in recorded history. And this was not only commodities, it was also industrial production. Argentina managed to have the growth rate of Germany and Japan in the early 20th century in terms of industrial production. And then what happened? Collectivist ideas, socialist ideas, and especially fascist ideas, which is basically another brand of socialism, started to gain traction. And then General Juan Domingo Perón was elected president in 1946. And since then, they managed to transform the complete Argentinian culture and institutions, a little bit like the takeover you are seeing in the United States with universities, with corporations and things like that, with a woke agenda. It's the same thing that happened in Argentina 100 years ago. And it took them until Javier Milei, and I hope he's successful, to recover from that. So now they're one of the poorest countries. They have 150% inflation rate, and they have 50% of the population living under the poverty line. This is extremely catastrophic for a nation that has, so many resources and human capital. So this is not only the past 4 decades. This is a century of decline, and Javier Milei is trying to bring back this golden age of Argentinian history, which, by the way, was to a great extent the result of the constitution of Juan Bautista Alberdi, who was a huge fan of the American founding fathers, especially of Thomas Jefferson. And he applied this philosophy, this libertarian philosophy, to the Argentinian constitution from 1853. And that was the reason why they had so much prosperity. So that tells you something about which ideas work and which ideas don't work.
So, Axel, for those of us in the West who are watching the economy of Argentina, the reality is that the Peronist philosophy looks an awful lot like sort of the modern left-wing economic philosophy. It's not pure socialism in the sense that Venezuela is nationalizing all industry. It's more that private industry exists, but it's heavily regulated, it's heavily subsidized. There are huge protections that are put in place for friends of the government. The idea is that all control of the economy is sort of command and control, but allowing for private ownership. It looks a lot like sort of the Nazi corporatist model, a lot of focus on autarky and everything being produced in country and trade deficits as opposed to open and free trade. And then when you get in trouble, you just inflate your way out of it. And I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing the left-wing press in the United States and abroad freaking out about Milei's election. This should be a moment where they look and they say, well, this is actually quite good for the West. I mean, Milei, unlike a huge number of politicians in South and Latin America, he's openly calling for a close relationship with the United States, with Europe, with Israel, with allies of the West. And he's openly saying that he does not want to have governmental relations with communists like China or socialists like Brazil. He really wants to be part of the West. And what you're seeing is this sort of standoffishness from the press and from some in the internationalist left in the United States and abroad. It really is an amazing spectacle when you have somebody who's begging to be part of the Western economy, begging to be part of the Western alliance. And everybody's kind of like, well, but we do like Lula.
Well, because even though Lula is a corrupt socialist who should be in jail, the thing is that Milei represents a massive defeat for these leftist ideas and the leftist ideology of corporatism. It's fascism. In reality, Perón was someone who admired Mussolini, and the system that he imported was not the central planned economy of the communists, but this fusion between the corporate interest and the government, which is what we are seeing increasingly throughout the West. And now I've lived in Argentina, and I know Javier Milei very well. We have done many things together, and he is basically representing the complete opposite philosophy. So the ideas that were brought to Argentina that defined the social evolution in the last century were all the same ideas that you're being taught at universities all over the West: socialism, Keynesianism, this sort of ESG type of ideas where government and the corporations have to work together in order to achieve different things. And this is what destroyed Argentina. And so I don't think people who criticize him on the media, mainstream media, really care about Argentinians, that 50% of them are living under the poverty rate, on the poverty line. And they just don't want to see him succeed, because if he succeeds, this will be like a second time where a developing nation shows the world the way to go. The first time, by the way, was Chile, which set the stage for the reforms of Reagan and Thatcher then in the United States and in the UK. And this is why the left hates Chile so much. At least in what's its history in the economic system. So I think they hate Milei and they will keep hating him. And the only way we're going to get out of this is if he has some help from the United States. And I think for that, it's important to have regime change in the US as well.
So let's talk about how Argentina can actually get out of the situation in which it finds itself. Argentina has obviously a very high outstanding debt. They've attempted to avoid the consequences of that debt, obviously, with tremendous inflation. Milei has talked about dollarization of the American economy, getting off the worthless peso in Argentina. It's going to be very difficult for them to do that because they just don't have any dollar reserves, given the fact that they've blown out their entire currency over the course of the last several decades. And so what that's going to mean, in essence, is that somebody's going to have to float them loans. There's going to have to be more debt that's taken in order to prop up the currency as the cuts happen at the same time, because it's going to take a little while for those cuts to go into effect and for the Argentinian economic machine to even rev up. What sort of willingness do you think there is on the part of international markets to invest essentially in the sort of new Milei philosophy? Do you think that the IMF is going to extend its loan terms? And how much is going to be asked of, for example, the United States in terms of helping to prop up the Argentinian economy until Milei can take the sort of austerity measures that are necessary to get the economy back on solid footing?
Well, first of all, Argentinians have $200 billion in cash under the mattress in Argentina. There are almost more dollar bills in Argentina than in the US. And this is not an exaggeration. I think it's the second country in the world with more dollar bills. So partly the Argentinian economy is already dollarized because people don't trust the peso, so they buy dollars, and everything is in the black market. I mean, You go to Argentina, you pay for the Four Seasons, and what you do is you bring your dollars in cash into the country, and then you sell them in the black market for the real exchange rate, and then you pay the Four Seasons. And they accept the pesos, and they have discounting machines. It's amazing, like if they were a bank. But then you also have potential to attract a lot of investments. Argentina has Vaca Muerta, which are huge reserves of oil and other stuff. They have lithium. And so the problem is that money is not flowing into Argentina because there is no rule of law, and you are not safe as an investor if you try to, if you put a lot of money into a country like that. But they have developed some clever ideas in order to attract these investments and to have them secure on an international level, so that you are not going to be confiscated. So that is part of the plan. He has, of course, to declare legal tender the dollar as well, because the dollar is not legal tender in Argentina. It's only the peso, which is worthless. And this is a way that you could allow the circulation of the dollar and start a replacement process. It's a similar way, a similar procedure that El Salvador used when they dollarized the economy. And then I don't know. I don't think the IMF will be very collaborative with Milei, not under the Biden administration, because they were with Macri. So the largest amount of money that or bailout the IMF has ever given was during the Macri years, almost $60 billion. So the largest creditor of the IMF is Argentina, but it was under Trump, and Trump liked Macri. I think they knew each other from somewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe they did business together. I think I read that somewhere, but I might be wrong on that. But now with Biden, I don't think that it's in the interest of the American left to see a libertarian, classical liberal / type of Republican president in Argentina being successful. So I think the pressure will be put on the international institutions not to collaborate with Argentina. And so we have to rely on private individuals and people like, I don't know, Elon Musk, who was very excited about this phenomenon in Argentina. Maybe he is interested in investing a couple of billions in, lithium exploitation in the country. And that's the way you can solve the problem. But this is a big mess. And it's going to be extremely hard to fix, but he has only, I think, 60 days. In 60 days, he has to announce all these measures. Otherwise, he will lose the political capital. Remember that he used the lion as a symbol of his campaign. And people voted for him because they wanted him to be aggressive when he runs the government and not a gradualist or a moderate. So he has to be, he has to meet the expectations. Otherwise, the country will turn against him.
To Axel Kaiser, Chilean-German lawyer and senior fellow at the Archbridge Institute, visiting scholar at the Hoover Institution of Stanford University.